My new book, Pillars for Life, A Guide to Spiritual Ethics and Practice, is now out and available for you to read and purchase. You can check out our website, willowhealing.org, to find a link, or you can find it on Amazon. We look forward to getting your feedback, and if you love it, please leave a review and share with your friends. Now it's time for the show. Welcome to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We are so excited to have you joining us on this journey where we explore different ways to empower your soul, whether it's healing in your kitchen or all the way up in the corporate world. Come with us as we look into different ways to heal your mind, body, and soul. Hey everyone, it's Catherine from Willow Healing, and today I'm here with Justin L. Shaw. So he is an author, a mystical comedian, and a sorcerer. And he would love to say that he's a little bit of Deepak with a little bit of Tupac, and is a former stand-up comedian with an inspiring story of overcoming trauma, emotional mental issues, and heavy drug addiction. It got him to a plenty of trouble, and he had had him stuck in the USA's sickcare system for decades. He just published his first book, Sourcery 101, 13 Rungs to a Higher Elevation of Consciousness, which is a system of healing that, if embraced, could actually change the world. So a big welcome to the show, Justin, and you had quite a journey to get here today.
Yeah, it has been quite a journey. I wouldn't change a thing, that's for sure.
We can say that now that we're on the other side of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sounds like you know where I'm coming from. Yeah, exactly.
I think we've all had something in our life, whether it's a big trauma or a little trauma or just lots of little things that, when we reflect back on life, we're like, okay, if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't be who I am today. And I can say that now I'm looking back, but at the time it felt like crap.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we can get into different. There are two different types of trauma. I'm sure we'll get into that. That's very true.
So I guess where do we start? So sounds like me, you were searching for something for so long and then you got stuck in a system that you really wanted to get out of.
Yeah. So yeah, you kind of talked about the traumas, and there are two different types of trauma, right? There's capital T trauma, which are kind of knee jerking, events that sexual abuse, physical abuse, these kind of knee jerking moments of, death of someone, maybe in a car accident, these traumatic moments, and I've certainly had my fair share of those, more in adulthood. But then there's this lower T trauma. That's this like slow burn trauma. That's kind of an emotional neglect, or when a child is told disparaging things, and are not really necessarily abused in any way. But for me, I wasn't told disparaging things, but I wasn't told positive things either. I was told nothing. I was brought up in an emotional vacuum of a home. There's a lot of pop culture in my book, and I always like to say my home was like Fight Club. The first rule was you do not talk about your feelings, and the second rule was you do not talk about your feelings, and that's how it was. It just that's you just we just talked about nothing, vulnerability, nothing. My mother never warned me about things. She never taught me anything. It was just me and her growing up. My father has, even if my father was around, he's an emotional enigma as well. And these are people who don't say the word love. They're not touchy feely people. And I just I didn't get loved. I didn't get told I was important. I didn't get told I was cared about. I got told nothing. So I wasn't told disparaging things, but I wasn't told any positive things either. I was kind of My parents were in the middle of the divorce, and I got kind of ignored. And so it just this when a child's not told these things, they kind of look to the world for validation and safety and love. And the world is always going to tell them they're unsafe, unloved, and not. So that's what happened with me, and that led to a lot of you know drugs and vices and all kinds of things in my 20s in particular. And yeah, that whole time, I just was really just miserable, like looking for something. And I finally went to rehab in my kind of mid 20s. That didn't really take. I had to go another time. And the second time, though, it seemed to take a little bit better. And I was introduced to kind of AA and the kind of that whole thing. And then, AA is kind of disguised Christianity. So I kind of they kind of go hand in hand together. So I kind of went that route for a while. And that worked for time being. But unfortunately, AA, the focus is on sobriety, and it's not necessarily it's about to kind of heal as much so that you're sober, but there's no emphasis on thriving or your goals or your vision of who you want to be, make you be in a person. It's just, we're going to get you sober. And so I got sober, and I was sober for years, and it was like, okay, I'm sober, now what? And that kind of led me to, um, some events that happened in my life. My mother died, my sister died, a close childhood friend died. I had an event where I was attacked in the face by a dog. I still got I got the scar right here. And then I had an instance where my fiance just decided to up and leave and move across the country and take our infant son and just cut me out of their life completely. I haven't talked to him in 2.5 years. And these are events that just, it's not to separate to say, well, it was me. It's just these things happen. And so at that time, that's when things really started to go in my mind. That was like, okay, there's got to be reasoning behind this. There has to be meaning found in this. And that's when these events started happening in my life that I wrote about, and um, connecting to the field and these really exciting things. That was the vision for the book and this whole healing thing. And I can get into that if you'd like to. But that's the background right there.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, Justin, because that's such a traumatic story, but in a good way, because you can talk about it now and it's not as triggering, because you did what a lot of people don't. You didn't get stuck at that point, when everybody's dying and your son was taken away and everything like that. You didn't get stuck in the why me. You're like, but why is this happening at a bigger level? You were curious and you went into that adventure. And that's normally where that shift happens, right? From instead of like, why is this happening to me? It's like, no, what is this? What's going on here? What's the bigger thing? And your question of now what? That is such a big thing, right? Like when you go, now what? Okay, we're here. And now what? And it's that curiosity and that wonder that drives you to look further into what's going on in your life that's happening on the outside and what's going on the inside when you're going through all of that.
Yeah, no, definitely. It was horrible. I mean, going through that, but these moments just brought me to a place of just spiritual bankruptcy, just complete spiritual bankruptcy. And I realized that is what is at the core of everyone's issues. We especially here in America, we separate everyone's symptoms. Everyone, all these things we have, any disease labeled chronic, essentially is an issue of imbalanced energy. We are great at acute injuries here. If I fall and break my arm and the bone is sticking out, I don't want to be sent for acupuncture. That's not an appropriate response, right? So we need doctors, and I never talk bad about them. But the thing is after you go to a doctor and the doctor sets the bone, it is the body that heals itself. The doctor's part is done. And so what this whole system I kind of came up with is, it is like setting the emotional bone and letting the body heal itself. But we're never going to be able to heal from these events of childhood or trauma or all these things without first setting the emotional bone, setting the spiritual emotional bone. And that's what so many people struggle and don't understand, is that we have to get in there, and it's not easy. I mean, you go in for surgery and set a bone, it doesn't feel good, but it is necessary for that to heal properly and to heal all the way, and it will be almost completely normal. What's left, after something like that happens, is a scar, and the scar never goes really anywhere. But you don't really want it to go anywhere because it's a reminder. And that's the same thing with our trauma, is that you can detach, once you detach the emotional reaction from the memory. That's the PTSD, is this memory, and then the emotional reaction in your body feels, and you're in that moment when it's really not happening. Once you can discharge that, and the memory is there without the reaction, now your trauma is alchemized into wisdom, and so that's what this whole system is focused on, is setting the emotional and spiritual bones so the body can heal itself. But just no one knows how to do that. No one has any idea the chronic condition, especially here in America. No one, a chronic condition can only be managed. It cannot be cured. And there is a big reason behind that too. Is a cured individual lines no one's pockets. And it's not to say every doctor is greedy, but a lot, like, it's, if we cure you, well, now we can't. Now you're cured and you're off, and well, now we can't take your money. So the chronic disease is a huge moneymaker in here, and no one understands how to actually cure it. And they say that it's incurable, but it's really, that's bullshit. So that's what this is about. It's about curing, getting into the original root cause of chronic conditions, which is spiritual bankruptcy.
Yeah, and I guess that's such a important point. And I love that you said, alchemizing the wound into wisdom, because that is such a powerful way to look at wounds. And exactly what you said, your wound will never go away, but it's when you can learn from it, and also, learn like what your triggers are, and learn what your fears and your doubts are that constantly come up, and you befriend them, then you can actually move forward more in life, and you can actually ask more of those questions, like you said, like, what's the source of this? Where is it coming from? Which we'll get to your book in a minute. But, where is it actually driven from? Because a lot of people go, oh, I've got sinuses. I'm like, oh, okay, you're blocking your intuition. Like, what? And it's like, well, actually, there's an energetic component underneath it as to why there's that feeling there. I said, because that's where your third eye is. That's where your inner wisdom is. So if you're having a lot of sinus issues, that's why you can't project forward. Another one that I think of straight away is, when people lose their voice and they're like, oh, I lose my voice all the time, like, you're not speaking your truth, because your body will just keep, internalizing those emotions and that wisdom, and it'll come out as dis-ease in your body. That's the whole point, right? It comes out as dis-ease. And when you open to and curious like that, and I'm so with you as well, that we still need doctors to help set bones and that sort of thing. But if it's, if my digestive system's out, I'm going to go get acupuncture, or I'm going to go, to my team of like my homeopath or my naturopath or whatever. I'm not going to go to the doctors, but that's just my mindset. So, yeah. So I guess, like, for anyone listening, so Justin's book, which I'll make sure it's definitely in the show notes, is called Sourcery, but it's spelled Source. Yes, like source,
Yep,
and then the re. Yes, and then the re on the end, rather than just sorcery as in magic. So do you want to explain a little bit how that title came about, and what inspired you to even write this book?
Yeah, so that's quite a story. So source energy, explaining. So that's why I separated. So, for those that are ready to turn their roommate into a frog or levitate the remote into their hand, you're gonna have to. It's a different book for that. I can't help you there. There's no cauldrons or eye of newt that is required for this sorcery. So it's SOU, so sourced energy, right? It is the field, it is the unified field, it is the Akashic field, it surrounds us at all times. Star Wars has the best explanation of it. Obi-Wan says it best. It is a force, a living force of energy made up of all the energies, all the living things, and it surrounds us, penetrates us, and binds the universe together. So it is this force, and explaining source to people is a bit like explaining water to a fish. So it's pretty difficult if you were to sit down with a fish and explain water to it, because it's like, what are you talking about? Well, it's the stuff. You're swimming in it. It's keeping you alive. You're able to get around because of it. A fish is going to have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. And so that is what source energy is, and sorcery and sorcerer, and that's why I consider myself a sorcerer now. It's just spelled with the U. It's able to, that little change in spelling. Once I kind of realized, and that kind of was a thing in my brain, and I realized that sorcery is not spelled with the U, and source energy, and I could separate the two with just that one letter. So that became a really important factor in writing this book. Was that, I mean, that's a catchy thing. Like, come try to be a sorcerer. But it kind of came to me in a moment of just insane. What was the very original moment was, I was doing a few of the things that I'm mentioning in the book. The book essentially is a guide who had to have one of these experiences. I call it a near life experience. Because like a near death experience, you're having this amazing blissful moment where you're out of your body and you see friends and loved ones and maybe angels, and that's a near death experience. This is a near life experience, and I was not dead at all, and I was not out of my body. I was fully on the bed and having this experience of, it was like a bliss attack. Like, that's the best way I can explain it. So I've had panic attacks my whole life, and this replaced panic with love, and this came on just all of a sudden, and it was kind of, I relate it to some of the things that I have in the book and I was working on at the time, but it just came on all of a sudden, and I realized I had been living my entire life in airplane mode. So if you think about airplane mode on a phone, you turn airplane mode on, you can't get any messages, there's no signal. I realized I'd been on airplane mode my entire life. And a phone perpetually in airplane mode is not living up to its potential. So that's where I realized in this moment of just kind of awakening, right? It is that moment that you hear about that happens, and people just something completely changes, and that moment really changed me. And and that moment happened when I was still struggling. I was kind of right in the middle of my all those stuff I mentioned earlier, all those traumas happening. It was kind of right in the middle of it, but and I wasn't quite ready. I was still drinking a lot at the time, and this is about 4 years ago. And you can try to avoid the call, right? Like I that was my answering the phone, and you can still try to avoid it, but it's not going anywhere, and it's going to pester you. And once you are off airplane mode, it doesn't go back on. So like I during that time, you can try to you can turn it off by drinking, like drinking and drugs and stuff. You can kind of turn off airplane, not psychedelics as much, but like the prescription pills, and that was kind of my main thing was alcohol and pills. And you can try to turn it off, but it stays on. And so it during this time period, and that's when I started realizing that it was time to get everything together, and that crossing the river of change, there is a strong undercurrent of discomfort always. So when I cross that river of change, and I'm on the other side now, which feels amazing, but I had to get through that extreme undercurrent of discomfort to get through, and it really feels so good on the other side. It was that moment. I use the fish analogy, and just that moment. It's very hard to explain something like this to people. It would be like if you stuck a fork in an outlet and you experienced that electric shock, and then you tried to explain an electric shock to someone that lives in the jungles of the Amazon. Like how do you explain what an electric shock feels like to someone that has no sense of electricity? So it's like I felt like the fish in the pond that had been living his whole life in this pond, and then I was caught by fishermen, pulled out, and I saw this whole other world. It's like this isn't the only pond. There are lots of ponds. There's an ocean. There's a whole other. There's land. There's like what is this? And it was that kind of moment. And I've just been on a mission ever since to try to guide people to have that kind of moment where everything changes.
Well, it's like, you have a genie, right? And then you finally let it out the lamp and it's not going to go back in. It's like you can't undo what you know. And like you said, once you turn it back on, it's really hard to turn it back off. I think I've only met one person who's turned it back off because they kind of went down a different route, and that's okay. But it's really interesting because they still have this deeper knowing that there's something else bigger up there. There's still something beyond us. And for me, it was like coming home. It was like, oh my gosh, I've known this my whole life. No one's put words to it, or no one's helped me experience it. Because it's like you discovered this infinite part of yourself that you didn't even know existed. That you can, tap into source, that you can tap into this magic that the world has for us, where we've been so conditioned to believe that we're just these ordinary beings when we're actually extraordinary.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's quite a moment, and so that's the moment that was I wanted everyone to, if we could all just experience this. And there's something called the Maharishi effect, where if you just get 1% of any given population to kind of come on to these ideas and things that I wrote about, and these kind of the rungs, which you can go over. But if you can get people to come on these, it only takes 1% to completely change the population. And you think like 1%, how would that do anything? But diet soda is 99% water. So 1% will completely changes the structure of the liquid. Chimpanzees are 1% away from being human. So 1% can completely remodel and change everything. And if we can just get 1% to get on board with these ideas and this whole this concept of the energetic healing and source in the unified field and connecting to that, it will dramatically change life for the rest of the population.
Yeah, and I guess there's been so many studies to back that up now too, because if you surround yourself with people who are like in an elevated state, or a higher, better mindset about themselves, I want to say, then you'll actually be elevated too, like by a lot. But if you're in like a room with people who are at like the lower consciousness, or people at lower vibration, your vibration actually drops down as well. And it's actually shown this. It's like if you're trying to improve your business, you're not going to go into a room with people that know less than you do. You're going to keep trying to find some people that want to know more. And so as you continue to expand, it's very similar to spirituality and getting in touch with source. You're going to keep wanting to, how do I keep moving through this next bit? How do I keep going through it? And to bring it back to your book, how do I got to the next rung on the ladder? Because once you start unpacking, you're just curious how you can keep going up, keep going up, keep going up, because you want to experience the bliss state, like you said, and you want to experience just that level of peace in your soul where you're not constantly fighting everything that's happening around you, but rather accepting it's there for you to learn and grow and expand yourself from.
Yeah. And you mentioned the ladder. That's why I was always, in AA and things like that. And I kind of saw, just, AA was helpful for me at a time, but the world is a world of gray. Sorcerer kind of understands that there's no black and white. Things are not just good and bad. There's the gray area, like Christianity was something that was very helpful for me at a time, but when my mother was dying, it was extremely destructive. So, because I thought she was going to hell and, all these nasty things it traumatized me way worse than just her dying. So, these things, it's kind of it's a main point of the book is to understand the world is a world of gray. It is not black and white. And AA is one of those things. It's a bit disguised Christianity, but one thing I saw was the kind of the 12 steps, and here's something that was kind of organized and put in place and seems to help people. So when I thought of like how to organize all this stuff in my mind that I had tapped into, this book was not written like with my mind. The brain is just the receiver that taps into the feeling that is. So it's well beyond anything I could have written as a C+ student. I can tell you that. So I just recently learned how to spell business. So this is well beyond anything I could have wrote just on my own. So but the way I structured it and kind of things came in, and so I thought about steps, and moving forward might be good, but moving up is better because a bird has a better perspective on things than a worm. So that's the 13 rungs, and you kind of climb higher, and each one. The goal is to eventually get to have this experience that I had, and I believe that following these things it will get you there, because I figured it out on my own and figured out these things, and just this is what got me here. So now I got to share this with everybody, and it takes 13 for a very specific reason. And one of the biggest things to have one of these moments is the kind of awakening of like maybe things I believed my whole life might not be true. And 13 is a great example. 13, at least here in America, is so unlucky that hotels don't have 13th floors here. That there is a 13th floor, but they call it the 14th floor. It's insane. And there's no there. I looked up like why is the way this is, and apparently it's kind of Christian rooted, and there was 13 people at the Last Supper, and Judas might have been the 13th person, and it's nothing. There's nothing, and it's a complete false belief. It's actually in tarot. It's the number for birth, rebirth, and transformation, and is a divine number, and is said to give good luck and prosperity to those who embrace it. So there's 13. That first is the first thing. It's kind of like, okay, start questioning things that you believe. It's really paradoxical, but in order to have one of these experiences, a lot of times religion is what stands in the way of having a true religious experience. It's really paradoxical and strange, but it's true. I mean, these beliefs kind of stand in the way of truly letting yourself go. Like the source is not confined by, it's the dogma of religions tend to keep us suppressed, not realizing that we are pieces of God in, all ourselves. And that's part of having one of these experiences is starting to let go. They're all pointed in the right direction, but the thing is it's a truth is a truth, but until it becomes organized, and then a truth often becomes a lie because the truth, the organization becomes more important than the truth itself. So it's just one of those things like to start questioning what do I believe, and so that's kind of one of the first steps of the rungs.
Yeah, and I guess that's such an important question. What do I believe? Because often we let everyone else's external influence tell us what we should believe rather than going, oh, that doesn't feel right. Like that's not aligned with me. And when you can learn to trust the power of your discernment, and trust that inner wisdom that comes through, then you're on the right track because you're actually backing yourself. But also you're getting closer to, like you have that chapter called rose-colored contacts. But so often what happened, right? Like they just once you take them off, you're like, oh my goodness, I've been missing all this stuff just about myself and about my life and about all these things that I'm able to do because I conditioned myself to believe I couldn't, or I got told it wasn't real, or whatever it might be. And the best thing is when you start to, well, I found in my experience, but when you start to follow things, Source will actually start to give you proof back. It doesn't happen a lot, but when it does, it's like, oh, thank you. Or you'll meet someone else that has this same experience or a similar experience, like, because I channel trees. And when you're saying channeling books, fully understand that. I also channel books. So I get what you're talking about, Justin. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I never would have said that. But when I channel trees, I thought I was going crazy. And I was with my spiritual mentor, and we were both channeling the same tree. And at that very moment, we both got the same name for the tree. So I was like, we couldn't have possibly preempted that or made that up. Like it was such a nice confirmation at that point. All right, we're on track here. This is really happening and this is what's going on. So, when you start to step out of that, that illusion of what life is. And like you said, you start to question everything in your beliefs, like the number 13, my husband's born on a Black Friday. So we talk about that often, right? I was like, I don't think it's unlucky, or like 666. 666 is actually an incredibly powerful number. It's just been associated with the devil and whatever it might be. So it's really interesting, like you said, when you start to pull those beliefs apart and start to question it all, how it's like, oh, hang on, this doesn't make sense at all. Like, why have I thought that for that long, or why have I believed that for that long? And this doesn't align with me, so I'm going to step outside of that.
Yeah. It is about just not. There's a lot of sheeple. I call them sheeple because it's just that just people tend to want to just be told what to do and follow everything and follow. But the truth is, 98% of society will spend 98% of their free time on shit that does not matter. So, when it comes to following the masses, sometimes the M is silent. So it's just important to remember, like, if everyone's going this way and you're feeling going to go the other way, like follow. We're told to keep that in, the intuitive voice down and just do what's we're, and that's just so wrong, so wrong.
Yeah. So I guess when you were writing the book, was there anything that came through and you were like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense now? Or was it like, oh yeah, this is what's been happening in my life?
Yeah. There were definitely some things that kind of came through and was like, oh, okay, so like that's how things work. So I did a lot of studying the kind of quantum realm and quantum physics, and that's the real physics, and science wants to separate it. It's like, oh, science is the very small and science is the big, it's separate science, and they're not. And one of the things that I was interested in, entanglement and things that like you can, if you think about a person and they call a minute later, that's kind of that entanglement. I was thinking about like how does that work, and because it makes sense, if we all started as one thing before the Big Bang, the Big Bang created this illusion of separateness. There really is no separateness. That it's all illusionary. And I kind of thought about, yeah, we're all one consciousness having different experiences. And, it's fascinating to think about. But one of the things is just how does I was asking it, like, how does that work? And like, how does that signal? Like, one thing that Einstein himself could not get on board with quantum physics was that he just didn't understand how things can be, two things and separated in space and time could be connected, or things could travel faster than the speed of light. But one of the things that kind of came to me was that if we're kind of the ocean we swim in is consciousness itself. So if you think about that, if you think about it, like if you're in a pool, electricity, a lightning bolt could hit, the other corner of the pool and you'll get electrocuted because water is a conductor. But if you're in an ocean, electricity has to follow classical physics. So if you're in an ocean and, lightning hits on the side, you're in Miami swimming and lightning hits in Cuba, you're not going to feel anything because it only travels so fast and so far. But consciousness and how thought works is you send out a thought and it's transferred immediately and fast because the conduit and the stimulant are made up of the same material. So it's like, it would be like a bolt of lightning hitting an ocean of electricity. So it would not lose conductivity, and it would be instantaneous. It'd be like the information on that bolt hits the ocean of electricity, and it just is immediate and fast and sends it out. So that's what kind of was exciting that came to me that I wrote about, was like, oh, okay, so that's how it works. That makes sense, because if we're in this ocean of consciousness, I mean, that makes sense to me. It's like you're sending out a piece of information. How does it get there so fast? If nothing can go faster than the speed of light, but if you think about it, like if the conduit and the stimulant are made up of the same material, it's going to be instantaneous. I love that kind of stuff. And when it comes to me, or learning more, and it's fascinating when you're off airplane mode. That kind of stuff just kind of naturally starts coming to you.
Yeah, even like when you learn about time, and our linear stuckness in the progress of time. And then, I got shown by, I was doing this meditation. I ended up with a shaman and in this meditation, and he's like, here's what time actually is. And he showed me, and it's like this three-dimensional model, and it's like kind of like the infinity symbol, and everything crosses over. And he's like, that's why this can be happening at the same time as this, and that's where you get the moments that you feel like you're having deja vu, like you've already gone through that experience, because there is like timelines that cross over. He goes, but at the same time you can shift your timeline, and all these things. I was like, wow, like this is so crazy. But like explaining it to people who have an experience can be really, really tricky, because it's like taking your mind to another level of understanding. It's taking your mind to another realm, if you will. And like you said, it's like a fish coming out of the ocean and going, oh, that's what we've been swimming in, that's how it is. So, but I really liked at the start of your book too, how you had the Sorcerer's Creed. Like, I thought it was such a beautiful way for people to commit to starting to open up their awareness and open up their intention and their curiosity, and accepting actually that they are human and having a human experience as well, because they find, especially when I started my journey, I just wanted to stay meditating all the time because there's so much happening out there. But then you have to remember that you're still on this plane, and you've chosen to come to this plane for a reason and have this experience, even though you've got all this magic happening all around you. And I guess sorcery in itself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the way to do it, the best way to do it is there's too many people with both feet in this world, and then there's people with both feet outside of this world. And those are in the spiritual realm. You run into those people a lot. They're just on another plane, and it's hard for them to communicate to people on this side. And the really way the effective way of teaching spirituality is to have one foot in, one foot out. And it's the most effective way to do it. Because if you have both feet out, you can't effectively explain to people with both feet in, like the realms and the spiritual. And if you go too far in it, you're going to lose people. So it is really critically and important to have one foot in and one foot out. But yeah, the creed is also, there's 13 in the creed as well. So that's something that kind of came to me, and was that something that kind of just a set of principles. It's like, this is a good way to start things off.
Yeah, and I guess, I like that the first rung is shadow work, because it's often people will want to always work. So if anyone's listening, not sure what shadow work with, it's facing your demons, if you like, finding the bits of yourself that you're trying to hide, or the things that, you keep in the shadows in the closet, because when you can work through those and accept those and see where, like, what you've learned from that, or how it's helped you grow, or anyway, then you can actually embrace yourself as a person. And a lot of people will look for, well, I found external ways to work on themselves, but you have to start and do your healing from within. You have to start there first, and then you can start to expand more, because it's when you're okay with yourself, or not even fully, but when you're aware of yourself, that you can then tap into more.
Yeah, shadow work. That's why it's the first rung, because you have to start there. That's the reactionary side to us. You introduced me, and I said that, I'm a little bit Deepak and a little bit Tupac, and that's the truth. There's the divine, and there's the shadow. There's this divine side of us, and everyone has it. Good and bad people really don't exist. There's just people making choices every day of who they want to be, and it's there's the Native Americans here say we have a light wolf and a dark wolf, and which one to feed more is the one that dominates. So it's just important, that dark wolf. And I like to compare the shadow to, like a car. So some people, their shadows are driving the car. And these are people with dumpster fires for life, and that was there. Like I'm not talking about it, just their life is just a dumpster fire. It's they're constantly in trouble, or getting fired from job all the time, or in jail. And I mean, relationships, it's just horrible. And then there's people where their shadow is in the passenger seat. And this is better than it driving the car, but these people tend to be able to function in society just fine, but maybe they have relationship issues. They can't hold a relationship down, where they're serial cheater, or maybe they drink a little bit too often, but they're functional. Because when you're driving a car, your passenger is pretty involved in the conversation usually. Where you want your shadow is in the back seat, because the shadow can't go anywhere. It's part of us. You have to learn to love your shadow instead of reject it, and then you have to learn to love it. So it's putting it in the back seat is like checking on it and just like, doing okay back there, how you doing? And that's where you want your shadow. That's where my shadow has moved from the driver's seat to the passenger to the back. In my 20s, it was driving. In my 30s, it was more passenger, and now it's in the back. And it feels very, very good. But I check on it. I love it. I've named it because it is not me. I'm a big fan of There's a lot of pop culture I said in my book, and True Romance, which is one of my favorite movies, is like Tarantino movie. Brad Pitt plays a kind of a stoner character in it, and he kind of lives on the couch of the main character, and he doesn't contribute anything. He doesn't pay rent. He doesn't do chores. He does nothing. But the one who owns the house, loves him like a brother. So he just lets him sleep on the couch and stay, and doesn't do anything. Just smokes weed all day and does nothing. His name is Floyd. So I've named my shadow Floyd because he doesn't add a lot to my life. That he doesn't. There's just he was created at a time, and that's fine. But I have to love him like a brother because we're family, and he's just going to stay on my couch, and I'm going to live my life, and he's there. So it's really good for people to name their shadow and understand when the shadow is talking and when the divine is talking. And that's what that whole rung is about. Is getting in touch with your shadow and understanding that you are not the shadow. You are the awareness of the shadow, and that's an important thing.
Which is such a beautiful analogy because it's so true. You can't ever. It's like people who try and get rid of their ego. Your ego's always there. It's part of being human. You just got to, like you said, put it in the backseat and just hi ego, hello again. And accept that it's there and that it's part of you. So I think that's such a beautiful way. And I love that you use pop cultures, especially there's lots of Star Wars in your book and Hogwarts and everything. And it just makes it more relatable, especially if anyone's like, oh, not Star Wars again. Honestly, Justin, the amount of interviews I talk about Star Wars on it's hilarious. But
Well, the force is real. I mean, that's just the best way to explain it. It's not all about Star Wars. But there's a lot of different. Yeah, there's a little bit, but it explains source, and the best source is the force. And I like to tell people and say, may the source be with you, because it is very similar to that.
Yeah, well, my favorite was I was watching Obi-Wan, the series, with my husband, and at the end, because he couldn't connect with anything, because he just kind of turned his back on everything. And at the end, he's part of I can't remember his name, but he shows up again. He goes, where have you been? He goes, I've been here the whole time. You just forgot. It's just like, because once you're connected, you're always connected. It's just if you choose to listen or not is the biggest thing, and if you choose to turn those voices down and let the shadow come forward, or like you said, put the shadow back in the back seat and let your true self shine through, that is when you're going to have a very different life and very different outlook onto what's happening to you.
Yeah, and I love the use of things like that and seeing things once you're kind of awake and you watch. I grew up in front of the television because I didn't have a lot of interaction with parents or people much. So pop culture is a very important. But now that I see pop culture in a different way, and I've figured out that a lot of the answer to our life's riddles are hidden in the nooks and crannies of pop culture. So it was really fun with all my already knowledge in here. I tapped into this thing and channeled it, but it channeled through my humor and through my subconscious, through my experiences, through all my pop culture knowledge, and ancient wisdom has been there since the beginning of time. But the reason Jesus was such an effective leader and teacher was he used these parables that made spirituality make sense. Unfortunately, these parables are 2,000 years old; they're a little bit dated. So, like, I'm trying to bring it to where people can understand a little bit and use parables and metaphors and stories to try to explain what this is.
Yeah, exactly. And it's exactly like you said, it's like trying to explain it in many different ways so that people can resonate with it on some level, so that they can actually grasp a concept. And just, even if it's just one thing, like one seed, it's enough often to then set people off on that inquiry and, questioning everything and questioning beliefs. And that's what we want. We want people waking up and starting to question things. And, even I have a little one too, and he questions so much. And we're like, it's so annoying, but at the same time, we don't want to discourage that, because that's what's going to keep, fostering his curiosity and free thinking and allow him to become infinite and who he wants to be. So, it's about allowing that to happen. And I guess as we finish our time together, Justin, because we can talk about your book all day, there's so much cool stuff in there. But I asked my
too much. I know.
No, it's good. But if we could, people just need to go and get the book now, right? We're just giving them bits so that they can just go, yeah, I want to read this book. But as we finish our time together, if there was something you could heal or change in the world, what would it be?
I would say heal the war within, and so we can eradicate war on the outside. That's where it starts. That's where it starts. You can't change the world, but you can change yourself, and that's, like Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world, and that's what we have to do.
And that's one of my favorite quotes, don't talk about the change, actually be the change. So, which is so profound, exactly, with everything that we talked about too. It's about embracing yourself from within so that, you can be that 1%, waking up and, sharing that with the world. And where can people find your book and find you, Justin, if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, there's I'm just now finishing up the audio on the book, which is really, the book came out probably about 2 months ago, and I'm, it's exciting and cool. But the audio is going to add in a whole other, because there's some jokes in there, and it's funny when I get to actually say them. So the audio is going to be out soon. The book itself is on Amazon, and it'll all be on there. It's if you just search my name, Justin L. Shaw, because Sourcery is misspelled, it seems to want to autocorrect it and send you to a set of books that's apparently about becoming a wizard. So they sound interesting. I mean, if you're interested, go for it. But get those books too. But mine, just search for my name, Justin L. Shaw, or you can click on the I assume they'll have a link or whatever. And the other way is I've been off. When I had my awakening 4 years ago, I just deleted all social media, all of it. And I've been off of it for 4 years. And now I'm in a spot where it's like, all right, social media gray zone again can be helpful and destructive. So now I'm gonna try to get in and get helpful again. But I'm on Instagram, and if you follow me, I'll follow you back. I'm not even telling my friends and family about it because they don't really want to. And I just joined last week, so it's Sorcerer with the U_13 on Instagram. That's the only one I have right now. I've been so peaceful off of social media, like it's been so nice. But I also want to connect with people, and it's necessary right now, and I'm looking forward to that part of it too. So follow me.
Yeah, beautiful. I'll make sure to follow you. And I had the
I'll follow you right back.
I had this same conundrum with social media. I actually even wrote a post about it. I had to go meditate with the spirit of social media and have a big discussion with it because I didn't like what it was for. But now I look at it as a portal to connect with people. Exactly what you said, because if we hide our messages, then we're going to be the world's best kept secret. But we want to get out there and awaken as many people as we can. So, we have to put ourselves out there, and we use it how we want to use it, not get sucked into the doom scrolling. Yeah.
It's that gray, right? It's not black or white, it's gray.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, Justin, for sharing your book with us. And I make sure I'll get everything in the show notes of people. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a good one. Tahoe.
Thank you for listening to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We have so much love and gratitude that you have taken the time out of your day to empower you on your healing journey. The views shared by the person being interviewed might not necessarily reflect that of the host and should be used at your own discernment. Trust what resonates for you and follow your heart and soul guidance. If you have any underlying medical conditions or mental health issues, please consult with your healthcare provider before pursuing any of the recommendations. Likewise, you can always contact the person being interviewed to find out more information. This can be found in the show notes. Remember to activate, align, heal, empower, and find love in everything that you do.